Order, order. Lewis Cocking to move the motion.
I beg to move that this House considers the impacts of roadworks on journey times, and it is a pleasure to speak under your chairmanship, Sir Roger. And I would also like to place on record my declaration as a Hertfordshire County Councillor. I'm pleased to have secured this debate on a very important topic for my constituents. When I describe the constituency of Broxbourne to those who are not familiar, I often say it is a collection of places without a dominant centre. Instead, many of the towns and villages that make up Broxbourne are connected by two main roads, the A10 and the High Street, or the old A1170, that spans from Waltham Cross in the south to Hoddesdon in the north. Demand on these roads, as the main arteries between the residential and urban areas, is therefore extremely high. And if there are works taking place on any location on our roads, the standstill traffic can affect almost the entirety of Broxbourne. This is a serious problem and, frustratingly, one that is not often discussed. According to INREX, a transportation data analytics company, the average driver in the UK lost 61 hours due to traffic congestion last year alone. This is 4 hours up from the 2022 figure. These delays are costing UK drivers, on average, £558 each. Staggeringly, this means the cost of traffic delays to the country overall is an eye-watering £7.5 billion. Yes, £7.5 billion. People looking to enjoy their hard-earned cash are unable to spend as much time as they would wish at local shops. Small business owners and traders struggle to make appointments on time. The less time people have to earn or spend is harder for our country and our economy to grow. The Chancellor said today economic growth will be her mission for this Parliament, so I hope the Government will recognise the point I've just made. The economic cost is especially damaging in the constituency of Broxbourne, where more people use a car or van to get to work than the national average. Hundreds of my constituents have completed my survey to share their experiences of the roadworks and how they affect them locally. They have made it extremely clear how disruptive long waits in traffic caused by roadworks have been on their daily lives. I've heard about delays to reach elderly parents, carers finding it difficult to carry out their vital duties, and children missing out on the start of the school day. It's not just car journeys. For many of my constituents, the bus service is a lifeline. And when roadworks have gridlocked our local roads, buses are inevitably delayed. Pensioners in my constituency have told me they're simply giving up even trying to go out. The knock-on effect of missing serious medical appointments or social isolation are obvious. My constituents' anger and frustration is made even worse by the fact so often that when you drive past roadworks that are being carried out, no one is working on them. Yep. And no one can be working on them for days or even weeks. We're told that the problem is urgent. The barriers and traffic lights are in place as an emergency measure, but can it really be an emergency if no workers are on site for such long periods of time? My constituents feel there has to be a way for the vital work to be carried out quicker and in a more logical way. Local authorities and utility companies must communicate much better between themselves to coordinate works in a sensible and cost-effective way. It cannot be right that the same stretch of road is dug up time and time again, sometimes by different companies, but sometimes by the same company. These organisations have to improve how they communicate with the public. It should be easier to find out why disruption is taking place and exactly how long it will be there. We cannot let it be the case, as my constituents have experienced, that residents wake up to find a four-way traffic light diversion in place to make it even harder for them to leave their house, to get to school and go to work. We should use technology much better and come up with innovative ways to avoid static traffic where we can. And one example is when you turn up to a four-way traffic light, it's on the main road, but there's a side street with a few houses down. All of the lights will go green and red in sequence. We should be able to use technology for the light only to go green down the cul-de-sac when a car is waiting to go. That is a small change that we can make to make roadworks a lot easier for my constituents and constituents across the country to move about. I welcome that the last government set out plans for drivers and consulted on several policies to make it easier for everyone to use our roads, including helping local authorities establish lane rental schemes. These schemes allow the Highways Authority to charge up to £2,500 per day for works on the busiest roads at the busiest times, with charges only applying to works carried out by utilities and highways authorities. The cost incentives to those organisations to move their works and carry them out at less busy times or engage in joint working with others are obvious. Around 95% of charges are avoided by taking these steps, meaning disruption for drivers is minimised without additional costs being placed on them by the firms responsible. Just 4 schemes are currently in operation, covering less than 10% of the road network in London and counties in the south of England. If these schemes were expanded across the country, it would raise significant funds for local authorities. As the last government proposed, at least 50%, and I would say 100%, of the surplus funds should be directed to the repairs of potholes so drivers can benefit from smoother journeys. I urge the Minister to publish the findings of that consultation, which closed on the 11th of March 2024, and bring forward these measures.
Well, my honourable friend Leslie.
I will give way.
I thank him for giving way, and I congratulate him on securing this important debate. In the previous Parliament, I introduced a 10-minute rule bill about the regulation of roadworks, which I'm reintroducing again next week, and which I'm honoured to say he has agreed to be a sponsor for, as has the opposition spokesman. Would he agree with me that one of the key bits in this is the handing out of the permits by highways authorities, which I'm trying to tighten up on? And if we could tighten up on that, we could help prevent a lot of the overruns that he so eloquently described to the House.
I thank the honourable member, the right honourable member, for his intervention. And I completely agree. There is a problem with the Highways Authority issuing permits, and there's also a problem when utility companies use emergency legislation where they don't even have to notify the Highways Authority of the works taking place. So residents can wake up, get in their car to go to work or go to school, literally drive to the end of their road and see, without any communication given to them, the road being dug up. So we need to take a two-pronged approach in that, and I'm really happy to be supporting his 10-minute rule bill to tighten up some of the regulation on this. We need to make sure that highways authorities are responsible when they're issuing their permits, and we also need to make sure that when utility companies use that emergency legislation, as I've said, if you're going to dig a road up under emergency, get someone working on the site as quickly as possible to get that emergency fixed. Don't dig up a road under an emergency, put traffic lights in place, and then allow mine and his constituents to sit in the traffic for hours and hours on end while there's no one working on that site. So I'm really pleased to be supporting my right honourable friend and his bill, which will include increasing the fixed penalty notices for utility companies whose roadworks overrun, which is also another important issue. And as I have said, the threat of financial penalties for the undertakers of these works can make a difference. So penalties for overrunning work should be increased and continue to do so in line with inflation, especially for those regular offenders. And I've said previously that sometimes when the same stretch of road is dug up, it is dug up by different utilities. So in my mind, them working together would save the utilities money, and it is absolutely extraordinary because there are examples there in my constituency of where the same utility company digs up the same stretch of road virtually at the same point a couple of weeks after they finish the previous bit. So they really need to forward plan and look at how they're going to do that moving forward. And these changes, along with lots of others, would bring the cost down for the consumer in terms of being able to spend our money where we want to in the economy, get to work on time and get to school on time. And I hope that the government will listen and take the side of my constituents and so many ordinary working people across the country.
Yeah, well done.
The question is, this House has considered the impact of roadworks on journey times. Lee Pitcher.
Thank you, Chair. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and thank you to the honourable member from Vauxhall for securing this important debate. I'd also like to highlight in this debate that cars are not the only vehicles affected by roadworks. Bus services are just as severely impacted, if not more. Bus networks and timetables are highly sensitive to disruption. They often can't change routes to avoid the impact of those roadworks. A point of disruption that might result in a 5-minute delay for a car will have a repeated and accumulating effect on a bus service over the course of the day, adding mounting disruption each time they run their route until the whole timetable can just fall apart along with the plans for those travelling. Working to a timetable makes it absolutely challenging for service users to adjust their journey plans when things are happening like this. Fixed capacities mean that even if they try to catch an earlier bus, they may well find it full. Delays on bus routes can have knock-on effects for transfers to other services or modes of transport, adding even more chaos and frustrations to the journey. To give a recent example, affecting my constituents in Doncaster East and the Isle of Axholme, one route experienced a 5% drop in service use due to roadworks, and even that was with 2 additional buses added to alleviate the disruption. And while 5% might seem minor, it translates to hundreds, potentially thousands of missed journeys over a course of just a few weeks. And the additional cost of those extra buses that are being put on and the loss of fares taken can then have an impact on funding other services. In another case, a bus service saw a 10% drop in punctuality for weeks while roadworks persisted. And I've heard of constituents who now walk an hour each day to use their nearest train station rather than stop for the bus right outside their door, fearing delays and cancellations and not getting to their appointments on time. Now, while this may be an option for some to walk 3 miles per day there and back, many, particularly the elderly, disabled, or those with small children, simply cannot add a 3-mile trek to their journey. And we all know the frustration of sitting in traffic and the stress of watching the clock tick by as we get closer and closer to the start time of work and know that we're going to be late. So there's not much that can make that more pleasant, sitting there, and add comfort that you might, that you can potentially take from the idea that at least once it's done, it's done. But the problem is that that comfort is often quickly dashed as a month later that road is dug up again, as the honourable member has just said. Roads need repair. No one absolutely disputes that. Utility companies need to lay new pipes and have access to their infrastructure. No one disputes that. But when a road is resurfaced 1 month, then dug up again to install new cables 2 months later, and new pipes going a few months after that, it's easy to see why people become frustrated. So what's hugely important here is how we get greater coordination between local authorities and utility companies. What we all want to see is frequent, reliable bus travel. So let's work together to make that happen for constituents in Doncaster East and the Isle of Axholme, but right the way across our country.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your stewardship, and congratulations to my honourable friend for securing this very important debate. Tonight, drivers in my constituency, Dumfries and Galloway, will set what I think is a record. At the stroke of 8 p.m, traffic cones will close the A75 road to motorists and force them to undertake a 96-mile, yes, 96-mile diversion. Surely this must be among the longest diversions ever forced on drivers. And the overnight closure between Newton Stewart and Castle Douglas is not a one-off. It's just the latest in a round that will continue into November. A journey which normally takes 40 minutes will become a 2.5-hour epic. While transport is devolved to the Scottish Parliament, I raise the issue here because the A75 grandly titled the Euro route, although it's often more akin to a cart track, has significance for every one of our constituents. Sir Peter Hendy's Union Connectivity Review identified the A75 as the key link between Northern Ireland, Scotland and England, as it serves the busy ferry port of Cairnryan in my constituency. It's of UK-wide importance. Estimates vary, but perhaps as much as 60% of Northern Ireland's trade grinds along that road. Maintenance, as we've heard, is welcome, vital. But diversions such as this treat the public with contempt. Surely we can do better. And the other road which services the port of Cairnryan is the A77. It too could be a record breaker, for it had, according to the A77 Action Group, 3 closures for road accidents and 161 for works, and that's only between January and September this year. It was shut on Monday and again on Tuesday, one for a lorry on fire, one for a lorry off the road. The A77 still hangs by a thread in Glenapp, where literally years of roadworks have failed to cure a landslip risk. Chair, Scotland's First Minister has agreed to visit Galloway to discuss roads from hell, which are screaming out for investment beyond mere patch-ups. £5 million in today's budget for the A75 is a start. I've invited the Secretary of State for Scotland to drive the A75 and the A77 too. He says his busy schedule will not allow, but might someone from the Department of Transport make time to see how awful these unenviable record-breaking roads are? We hear boast that Labour has reset relations with the SNP, so perhaps they could share a car with the First Minister. Finally, Chair, can I make an early plea that should anyone suggest a traffic cone czar, we instead call the position the cone arranger? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to speak. So I didn't give prior notice, and congratulations to the honourable member from Roxbourne for securing this important debate. And this is a matter of a disturbing level of cross-bench consensus, I fear, because I think we're all largely saying the same thing, that if I take my constituency of Rossendale and Darwin, where single trunk roads serve the vast majority of the constituency and where residents and businesses are daily delayed and constrained by the incessant roadworks that they face, to the extent that several of the major employers in the valley, on which we are entirely reliant, are threatening or considering leaving the area because of the costs to their business that these relentless roadworks impose. It's a constraint to growth, and it's a constraint to people's everyday lives. And I think it would be fair to say that there is a complete consensus that something must change. And yet we are constrained by the previous legislation. I think the last act was amended in 2004, the Traffic Management Act, and does limit what we can do right now. It limits the amount of fixed penalty that fixed penalty notices can charge for street works that overrun or don't follow their permits. It limits the approach to lane rental schemes to 5% of a given local authority's road network. But these are relatively straightforward things, frankly, to change. And I really do hope that this is something that, with this level of cross-bench consensus, with the government's imperative on growth, and with the recognition of the damage that the impact this has on everyday lives, that we can make those relatively, I would hope, straightforward changes, Minister, and give our communities and our businesses the boost that they need, for roadworks that are properly managed, properly regulated, and with proper and effective penalties for overruns that are, in many cases, inexcusable. Thank you.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, can I congratulate the honourable gentleman from Broxburn for setting the scene so very well. I'll not delay the House very long. Mr. Chairman, just want to give a contribution from Northern Ireland with highlighting some matters and then putting forward a couple of solutions. That's my proposal for today. I live in a rural community, and the only way of getting on a regular basis to where you want to be is jump in a car and drive up the road. And because I live in the Irish Peninsula, which is by its very nature, there's a road down one side of the peninsula and up the other, and one through the middle. Your accessibility to certain roads mean that they're not always. If one closes, then you have severe problems. But so I'm used to getting a journey to town. I'm used to the journey being a wee bit later, and perhaps maybe we would like it to be. Just to give one example, in Belfast, where there's been roadworks for some time. They have led to people missing flights, being late for their GP appointments, and late for work, and even missing their NHS and operations in the Ulster Hospital. And it's quite hard to comprehend how that can happen. And even the buses can't get through either, as the honourable gentleman had referred to earlier on. And that's even the fast buses, that they can't even get along the road either. Now, Northern Ireland, to give a perspective of where we are, problems that I see, Minister, is one for small businesses, and particularly those who have been habitually closed. One I think of in particular is McClemens's Garage in the Portaferry Road, Newton Ards. Road Service can't do anything about having to close the road. Insurance means that vehicles can't travel up and down the road when they're doing major works. So that means that the business closes. But he's lost business over a period of maybe 8 to 10 weeks. And that's an impact upon him because it's passing traffic and he doesn't get the trade. So the first question is, can more be done to help businesses who are directly impacted by what takes place? Better coordination. I give two examples, Mill Street, Newton Ards and Lockridge Road. It was a few years ago, to be fair, whenever Northern Ireland Water come and dug the road up, filled it in. The gas guys came along, they dug the road up and filled it in. And then behold that, the third one came, was British Telecom. They came along, they dug the road up as well. And the very same place, the same hole in the ground. And it seems to me that better coordination would have been something that three utilities could have better coordinated and done it better together. So it's about better coordination, number one. But I want to give two solutions if I can. I know that the road service in Northern Ireland have done this. The Sydenham bypass that carries a vast amount of vehicles, it carries thousands of vehicles every day. It's a major thoroughfare bringing people up from the Ards Peninsula and the Ards and Bangor right into Belfast. So the importance of that road is really important. So what they did, Road Service came up with a solution. Solution one was to do the work at the weekend. That means that when people are going to work from Monday to Friday, the road's available, but on Saturday, Sunday, it's not. So how do we do it better? So we asked the Road Service to work more at the weekends, and also can I put forward a solution. I understand it's difficult in times of financial stringencies, but nonetheless, it is not impossible, I would suggest, Sir Roger, for work to be done at night time, whenever less people are on the roads and there's less impact. So two solutions to consider: doing the roadworks in the evening and at the weekends, as they've done in Northern Ireland, and it's successful. And just a very quick point: whenever the roads are closed, there really has to be a better way of letting vehicle owners and those who are travelling on the road know exactly what's going on. That's my contribution. Thank you, Sir Roger.
Thank you, Sir Roger. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I'd also like to thank the member for Broxbourne for securing this important debate. I know from my own inbox and that of my colleagues it's something that impacts many of our constituents' lives, works and businesses. Just this weekend in my own constituency, there's been large-scale disruption from the roadworks. On the A3, which runs through Wimbledon, roadworks caused huge congestion, not in just south-west London, but across much of Surrey and Hampshire. This was particularly severe because the disruption was compounded by South West Railway's decision to cancel trains on the same route due to planned engineering works on the line, something to which I will return. A lack of investment in our roads have left many in a dire state, with less than half the local road miles in England and Wales now classified as being in good structural condition. Urgent work to repair our roads is vital, particularly as delays in maintenance compounds the problems, leading to higher costs and greater disruption. Now, As transport spokesman, I am, of course, the most important person on the Lib Dem front bench, as I am the lead on that staple of every Lib Dem focus leaflet, the ubiquitous pothole. I consequently welcome the Chancellor's announcement today of additional funding to fix them, as I know the Minister will as well. However, before we get carried away by all this bounty, let's not lose sight of the fact this is against the backdrop of a real terms cut to the Department for Transport budget, something I will cover in more detail in a subsequent budget speech. Clearly, the roadworks needed to fix such problems inevitably caused disruption to the road network, leading to longer journey times, which are not only frustrating but economically damaging. National Highways estimated in 2021 that the delays on the strategic road network cost the economy around $3 billion a year, of which at least 15% was due to roadworks. It's consequently vital when roadworks are planned that disruption to the wider network is minimised. That requires communication across the sector to coordinate matters. However, it's sadly all too apparent that there's a lack of joined-up thinking and too much fragmentation across our transport system to achieve that coordination. On the London to Portsmouth route last weekend, for example, it should surely have been possible to ensure planned work on the A3 and the rail line did not coincide. This is the type of issue we need to avoid, and I trust the Department for Transport's promised long-term strategy addresses such issues. In addition to roadworks, as we've heard, which are concerned with the maintenance improvements of our roads, another source of delays, frustration and cost are the street works when utility companies dig up our roads. There's a great deal of congestion in Wimbledon town centre at the moment because Wimbledon Hill Road is completely shut due to emergency work on a collapsed sewer, leading to major disruption to bus routes and traffic jams in surrounding roads, significantly increasing journey times in much of my constituency. An emergency is, of course, an emergency. I understand that. But that does not excuse utility companies from not doing all they can to ensure disruption is kept to a minimum, as my honourable friend made that point. And whilst companies are obligated to return the road to the state in which they found it, that, as many people in my constituency will tell you, is often not the case. Yes, utility companies can theoretically be fined up to £10,000 a day for delays, but many roads have fines capped at £250, whilst even this level of enforcement is problematic. The Lib Dems strongly believe local authorities need to be given more powers to ensure utility companies minimise the disruption they cause and do not act with impunity. The previous government consulted on increasing their powers, including raising the level of FPNs that can be issued for certain street work offences and allowing overrun charges to apply at weekends and bank holidays. But the results were never published. I understand the Minister said the results will be released in due course. I'm hoping she might take this opportunity to tell us when. As we all know, our road network is critical to both constituents and businesses. The government could be doing more to keep the traffic flowing, people travelling and the economy growing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Roger. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and can I add my congratulations to my honourable friend for Broxbourne for securing this important debate. I think the consensual nature of the debate this afternoon does show that if there's one thing that we on these benches and His Majesty's government can agree on, is that nobody likes road closures, traffic jams, the misery that comes with that. In urban and suburban areas, this often means unwanted congestion and pollution, and as the honourable gentleman on the government benches said, delays not just for private motorists but for buses and for hauliers alike as well. Although I would gently suggest to him that after the budget this afternoon and the Chancellor's increasing of bus fares, that under a Labour government people are going to be paying more to sit on that bus in a traffic jam compared to the £2 bus cap we brought in. In rural areas such as my own constituency of Mid-Buckinghamshire and that of my honourable friend for Strangford, a 100-yard road closure can often mean a 5 to 10 mile diversion, and that's before I even start on the government-sponsored programmes like HS HS2, whose road closures seem to go on indefinitely and forever, which is something directly within the government's gift to challenge and to fix and to sort out. And we have likewise heard from my honourable friend for Dumfries and Galloway about the intolerable problems on the A77 and the A75 that the Scottish Government simply must fix. It must be said, of course, Sir Roger, that in some cases, some road closures are not necessarily a bad thing. It is the result of getting things done, but it is how we manage this process, how we ensure that utility companies are held to account, that where local government or national government, through national highways or whichever agency it might be, are taking this action, that they do so responsibly and they do so remembering that they are causing real people, real people's lives, real people's businesses, real people's school runs, real people's trip to the doctor or to a hospital or to any other medical appointment, significant inconvenience. And so if we can get things in place that manage this, everybody will be much happier. Let's not forget that it's only through economic growth that car ownership and indeed other forms of transport did become more affordable and cheaper and grow for many. But road closures that stick around longer for necessary, a problem that the last government did take action on, and we can discuss where that can go further, as part of our plan for drivers, is critical. For the last government introduced a performance-based streetworks regime to ensure utility companies resurface roads to the best possible standard, a new lane rental scheme where utility companies can be charged up to £2,500 per day for streetworks. That enabled the delivery of over 2 million streetworks between 2022 and 2023. In actually just January of this year, the previous government launched a streetworks consultation, the results of which were clear. Doubling fines in some instances from £500 to £1,000 for utility companies found breaching the conditions of their jobs, £10,000 per day overrun charges to apply to weekends and bank holidays, the busiest for the road network, to direct at least 50% of money from lane rental schemes to be used to improve roads and repair potholes. That is already filtering down to local authorities, Sir Roger. In my own constituency, Buckinghamshire Council's Pothole Pro is making light work of what has historically been an incredibly time-consuming and labour-intensive task, and also by effectively recycling and reusing damaged tarmac for resurfacing stretches of road, fixes are happening quicker and more efficiently, ultimately saving taxpayers money and time stuck in traffic or diverting around road closures. Technology in many of these instances is our friend and can get these repairs done so much quicker. Conservatives, Sir Roger, are firmly on the side of drivers. So my challenge this afternoon in this important debate to the Minister is what she and the government will do to improve the real-life experience for Britain's motorists and those that travel on our buses and those who require the use of the road network to make deliveries and to get their goods around the country. What is she going to do to meet the challenges set out by my honourable friend for Broxbourne? What will the government do to get to a point where we can have sensible reforms that build on what is already in place to hold those that dig up our roads to account? A good start, as we've heard from my honourable friend for Rayleigh and Wickford, would be to give government support, as opposition support is already in place, for his 10-minute rule bill. That would see real action. That would improve the lot of all of our motorists. Will the Minister confirm the government's stance on my right honourable friend's 10-minute rule bill, which we equally saw in the previous Parliament? Britain's motorists deserve to know. And on the state of our roads, which is an important factor, as honourable and right honourable members have already said in this debate, can the Minister confirm, will the £4.7 billion worth of funding the previous government put in place through the Local Transport Fund, announced in February this year, continue, much of which was going towards filling potholes across the North and Midlands across the next 7 years. Is that money fully intact? Is it being kept? Will it be put to good use as the programme that the previous government announced intended it? Will we see the continuation of the £8.3 billion for highways maintenance funding from Network North, announced in October 2023, that should last all the way through to 2033? Is this new Labour government going to continue that exact amount of spending? Because I fear today's announcement in the budget by the Chancellor of £500 million for potholes simply isn't going to touch the sides of the problem we face as a country. When I look at my own constituency, when I look at the county of Buckinghamshire as a whole, where Buckinghamshire Council have a £105 million road repair fund for one county alone, it seems that a £500 million sum of money, as announced by the Chancellor, simply won't go far enough to challenging and fixing the problems that Britain's motorists face. So, it seems that all sides of the House are agreed on the problem. Labour are now in government. Will the Minister confirm precisely what it is that they are going to do?
Gillian Greenwood, Minister.
Thank you very much, Sir Roger. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship again today. And I congratulate the member for Broxbourne for securing this debate on the impact of roadworks on journey times. And I thank all honourable members who've contributed to what's been a really informative and interesting debate this afternoon. People use our roads to make journeys every day, and how we manage them has a direct impact on actually everyone's lives. The frustration caused by congestion and the poor condition of our roads are recurring themes which my department and I are very focused on, and I'm sure as members of Parliament we all hear the concerns that have been exposed today every time we knock on a door, frankly. And I very much recognise that the point that the honourable member made about growing traffic congestion, and frankly that's one reason why this government is acting to enable more people to choose public transport or active travel. We need to tackle that congestion, and it's something that we need to think about in the round. We are determined to deliver a transport network that works for all road users, whether they are drivers, bikers, cyclists, bus passengers, pedestrians or horse riders. And the challenge of congestion is only going to grow, given that over the coming years the number of roadworks will increase because of new housing developments, the continued rollout of broadband, and the need to meet our targets for installing electric vehicle charge point infrastructure to deliver this government's commitment to net zero. We also all need the services provided by utility companies, and we want them to maintain and improve their infrastructure. We know that there are over 2.2 million works taking place in England each year, and that the congestion created costs around £4 billion. In addition, this government is determined to tackle the problem of potholes and other road defects on our networks. And as the member for Broxbourne will know, we have a manifesto commitment to fix 1 million more potholes a year, every year of this Parliament. And I'm pleased to say that we've already made a start by announcing in today's budget a £500 million funding increase for local authorities in 25-26. This is an increase of almost 50% on 2024-25 levels. And whilst I'm more than aware that authorities and members alike will be interested to know how their areas and their communities will benefit from this, specific allocations will be announced in due course. In total, the Department for Transport will be investing about more than £1.6 billion in local highway maintenance in the next year. This includes additional funding on top of that already provided to city mayors through their city regional sustainable transport settlements. And that's to help local councils maintain and renew their local highway network. Now, of course, future capital investment in our infrastructure, both roads and rail and other things, will of course come in the spending review in the spring. Now, I enjoyed the contribution by the Honourable Member for Dumfries and Galloway, and I hope that the Scottish Transport Secretary enjoyed it too, as of course this is a matter for her and the Scottish Government. But the pressure on our road networks caused by works is not going away. However, we want to find the right balance between allowing these necessary works to go ahead whilst minimising disruption for everyone using our roads. I will.
I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving way. Her opposite number in the previous government kindly granted me a meeting about my bill, and then unfortunately it ran out of parliamentary time. As I have 10 minutes to fill next week, would she allow me as part of my speech to say that we've discussed this today and she's kindly agreed to meet with me so that we can discuss the merits of that bill and whether the government might be prepared to adopt it at whole or in part. Would she allow me to say that next week?
Well, I'm certainly looking forward. I think the appropriate thing for me to do would be to listen to the Honourable Member's speech next week and to the arguments that he makes. But I'm sure that we will find an opportunity to discuss it in the future. I also want to assure the Honourable Member for Wimbledon that National Highways always works closely with Network Rail to ensure that works on our national networks are coordinated. And if that doesn't happen, I would hope that he would draw it to my attention, and I would certainly seek to raise those issues with them. Now, there's already a great deal of scope for works to be planned, managed and coordinated more effectively, as the Honourable Member called for, and importantly, for the public to be told about when works are happening and to be warned about the impact that they might have on their journeys. It is the responsibility of the local highway authority to coordinate any works taking place on their roads, including their own works. And in doing so, councils must take account of the needs of everyone using the road, considering the implications of works for both their own network and that of neighbouring authorities, and act to minimise or prevent problems. And of course, utility companies also have a duty to cooperate with the authority. Now, street works permit schemes are now in use by all but one local authority, and they provide councils with the proactive tools to improve the management of all works in the street, as well as offering incentives to minimise disruption. To support the transition to permits, the Department for Transport set up Street Manager, which is our online service for planning and managing street and roadworks in England. And since 2020, all local authorities and utility companies and their contractors have a single view of the street and visibility of the whole network to help them plan and coordinate works for the benefit of road users. It enables better forward planning and more joint works. And we also stream open data on live and planned works that apps and websites make available to the public. And we have a commitment to continue improving this service to ensure that it meets users' needs. Now, as the Honourable Member highlighted, lane rental is another tool to help local highway authorities reduce the impact of works taking place on the busiest roads at the busiest times. And these schemes allow authorities to charge utilities up to £2,500 per day for works on these roads. Now, the Honourable Member for Strangford expressed the hope that roadworks are planned for periods when they cause least disruption. And these are, of course, devolved issues in relation to Northern Ireland, but his point is well made. These charges, the lane rental charges, act as an incentive to encourage those planning works to complete them as quickly as possible, carrying out their works outside of peak periods, or to consider alternative locations to minimise disruption. Lane rental schemes also encourage joint works, as this can attract discounts or charges can be waived. And any surplus revenue can be spent by the council on ways of reducing the impact of works on congestion. Highways authorities that want to set up schemes can bid to the Secretary of State for approval, and we have provided bidding guidance on how they can do this. As he said, there are currently 4 lane rental schemes in operation on Transport for London's network in London and in Kent, Surrey and West Sussex. And the Secretary of State has recently approved a scheme in East Sussex, which is due to begin in 2025. Now, we know that many more local authorities are developing schemes and this government wants to support them. We want to make the lane rental scheme application process as easy as possible for local authorities, and I'm reviewing the application and approval process with my department to see what improvements can be made. Now, on the issue of fines and penalties, local authorities can already issue overrun charges of up to £10,000 per day for works that exceed the durations agreed as part of the permit. There are also a range of offences such as breaching permit conditions or working without a permit for which fixed penalty notices can be issued. Now, as my honourable friend for Rossendale and Darwin said, these powers can and should be used to improve the daily lives of our constituents who rely on the roads. And as I grew up in his constituency, many of those roads are very familiar to me. And as has been said a number of times this afternoon, the Department for Transport consulted earlier this year on proposals to apply overrun charges at weekends and to increase fixed penalty notice charges. And I'm fully aware that the Department's response to that consultation is eagerly awaited. I'm considering the proposals and we will publish our response very shortly. And as I've already said, I look forward to listening closely to the forthcoming 10-minute rule bill from the Honourable Member for Rayleigh and Wickford. Now, in addition to the existing range of powers available to use by authorities to manage roads on their network, I hope and expect that we will all see improvements to how utility companies carry out their works as more authorities operate lane rental schemes. My department is determined to put people at the heart of everything we do. So as we continue our work, we'll constantly look at how we regulate roadworks to see if further improvements can be made for the benefit of everyone who uses our roads: drivers, bikers, cyclists, pedestrians and so on. For example, we plan to look at how urgent or emergency works, and I do recognise they cause particular difficulties, how they're planned and coordinated more effectively, especially when they're affecting traffic and causing disruption, including for buses. Now, my honourable friend for Doncaster East and the Isle of Axholme set out very clearly how roadworks can affect the punctuality of bus services that our constituents rely on. And I know that my own constituents in Nottingham would very much recognise that, as we've got some major roadworks in our city centre. Now, I would, when we're on the subject of buses, and they are important road users, I would gently point out to the official opposition spokesman that the previous government only funded its bus fare cap until the end of the year, and we are extending the cap and investing in better bus services across England. So I'm surprised he also didn't mention the fuel duty frees, but there we go. To conclude, Sir Roger, I'd like to thank the honourable gentleman for raising these important issues that affect the daily lives of our constituents, all of us, I think. And I'm determined to keep people moving and to deliver the cleaner, greener, smoother, less congested roads that all our constituents want to travel on. Thank you.
Who's talking to wind up the debate?
Thank you, Sir Roger. And I thank the Minister for her statement and reply. And I want to thank all of the members that have taken part in the debate. And I also want to thank all of my constituents, the hundreds of them that have replied to my survey online, telling me about their experiences. And I just want to make a few final points, if I may. What we really need to tackle is the emergency works, because as I've said, they turn up unannounced, and most of our constituents can understand if there is a real emergency, get the works done as quickly as possible. But when roads are dug up by utilities, it's quite often the case, under that emergency legislation, and residents drive past day after day and see no one working on the site, that is a real frustration. And I won't repeat the language I use when I'm in the car by myself, when I myself see that occurring in my constituency. And also, what is even worse than that is you can drive past cones and traffic lights and there's not even a hole dug in the road. So not only have we had no one working on the site, they haven't even started works, but they've put the cones out what seems like weeks before to cause that disruption and to make people sit in traffic. In terms of the planned works, sometimes in these cases, because there are lots of organisations involved, sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, and it's like someone sat down and said, we want to plan all of these works all at the same time, so you can't move anywhere around the local area. So we really need to get better at planning all of those works through the Highways Authority and through the utility companies, in particular, as I said, the emergency works. And look, if we want to unlock economic growth in this country, get the economy growing at a really rapid speed, we do that by keeping Britain moving.
The question is that this House has considered the impact of roadworks on journey times. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. No? The ayes have it. Order, order. Sitting stands adjourned.